ago, Kevin De Bruyne was the same player he is now, in my opinion. Great player, fantastic player. City's best player right now, by a mile. But 2 years ago, he was surrounded by other great players.
Yeah.
And now we seem to have become completely reliant on Kevin De Bruyne. That's how it feels to me. And
I agree.
I get that Kyle Walker, who has had some stick, obviously he gave a penalty away. I do get that Kyle Walker, to me, looks like somebody who cares, somebody who runs up and down, somebody who chases back. He might not be perfect.
Yeah.
And actually, I'm sad to see, and this will surprise a few people perhaps, I'm sad to see Nicholas Otamendi go, because to me, he was City's only and best out-and-out defender. He wasn't perfect, but he was an actual defender an old-fashioned defender who was all about trying to stop the opposition. And now we have players who are all about passing in defence, but don't seem to be able to defend.
We're never going to have a decent defence without players that are prepared to get themselves kicked to death. Because I agree with you, Otamendi has been in the headlines for all the wrong reasons in the last few matches that he's been in, because he's either he's give away fouls, he's fouled badly, or he's give away penalty, whatever.
But he's always in the thick of the action, and some of the others go missing, don't they?
That's exactly it. I mean, a defender is going to get into trouble. Defenders have got more chance of being sent off because of what they're supposed to be doing. So I can't believe Otamendi's going. I've not seen the news, so I'm gutted about you saying that. We need more players like Otamendi that are prepared to get stuck in. And I kind of think that if we'd have had more players prepared to get themselves stuck in, we wouldn't have given 3 penalties away. But we'll probably talk about it later. But I don't still like that second penalty. I still don't think it should have been given. But I'm sure we'll talk about that in a bit. Right, I've had a bit of a rant, so I'll give some room for some of the others. But of course, I've got lots more to say. Go on.
Can I have mine now? Right, football for me is gone. From what it was a couple of years ago, or even last season, it's gone to a level now where, you know what, I wasn't even bothered about watching a game yesterday, if I'm being perfectly honest. I wasn't bothered about watching it. The 3 penalties, I've come out on Twitter today and said the soft penalties. And people have said, oh no, they were definite penalties. In modern football, they were definite penalties. But football has become the softest contact sport on the planet. I might have mentioned this. I used to play rugby. I'm about 15 stone myself. Now, I used to play against guys who were 18, 20 stone. For me to put that person on the floor who didn't want to go on the floor, if you want to stay on his feet, it took a lot of effort. Just by, if I could play rugby and just rest my hand on somebody's shoulder and they would fall over, I would be playing for Great Britain, England, probably the All Blacks and everybody. Because that, to me, is not football. Them 3 penalties were played for and got. Yeah, Walker touched him. Yeah, the other penalty, again, they were touched. As soon, and you listen to the commentary, the commentators said, as soon as he felt a touch, he went down there. And as though it was like, well played. It's not well played, it's cheating. In this modern day, it's not cheating, because that is what football's become. But in my era, when I used to love and watch football, with my dad on the terraces, you used to see some crunching tackles. The players would just get up and get on with it. There was a situation where I think it was Raheem Sterling went through, and he was touched in the same way as the other players were for Leicester. And I think he slid, and Schmeichel sort of like stopped him, sliding in the back of the net. They all said, oh, that's definitely not a penalty. There was a bit of a touch, but not enough. Well, what's the difference between a little touch and even a little touch? It's a touch. If you're going to give a penalty for a touch, you've got to give it for all touches. Football now is a non-contact sport, in my opinion. As for the performance, there was not one player on that pitch yesterday that could come out with, in my opinion, above a 6. We scored an early goal. We dominated for the first 30 minutes. They didn't have a clue. We didn't put the ball in the back of the net enough. We were tippy-tapping about. It wasn't the penetrating football that we've had from 2 seasons ago, maybe. You know, last season was a decline from the season before. We've lost that press. We've lost the urgency. You know, we just seem to pass the ball about as though it's the last 5 minutes of a game just to waste the game away. Phil Foden, I wasn't aware he were playing yesterday. Mendy, I've said this before, he's got the turning circle of the QE2. He's got no pace. He's gone even slower this season from what I've seen. So he's excess baggage we're carrying. Kyle Walker, can't fault him. He's trying his best. He's doing his bit. And on another day, he might have had a goal himself yesterday. Edison, great distributor of the ball, or was a great distributor. We don't really see that much of him doing that this season so far. Who else can I single out for? I don't like singling out players. I could go through all the 11. Fernandinho was the only one that could come out with any sort of praise, yet he got substituted, and I haven't a clue why Pep did that. Pep, to me, this season, we're a one-trick pony. We've got one style of play, and that's it. The only thing he's changed this season, he's had to bring in an old-fashioned centre forward, if you like, because we've had injuries. So he brought the lap in. He's your old school, your Alan Shearer kind of player. But if we're not going to get the ball to him, we're not going to do the tracking back. You just kick the ball over, stick one of your speed merchants on the end of it. One of our defenders, he's going to touch one of the players in the box. Down they go, penalty. That's what happened yesterday. That was the run of play yesterday. And that concludes the Risby rant. Thank you.
Well, you know how intensely I watch football, and I think everybody that listens to the podcast by now in 18 months probably know that I go a bit more in depth and this is no offence to Paul, but I go a bit more in depth than Paul. I watch a lot of football, I watch a lot of teams, I watch a lot of teams that we play against in their matches and kind of understand them as well. I think we can all agree that yesterday Leicester came with a game plan, and it wasn't going to plan for Brendan Rodgers when Mahrez put us ahead. I think Rodgers must have been thinking, here we go, that's not gone to plan. And then we allowed them to get back in the game. I agree with Louise to an extent in the fact that Kyle Walker's improved from last season. Last season at times, I thought Kyle Walker was a liability. I remember the Crystal Palace game at home, we drew 2-2. It was one of his worst ever games in, never mind a City shirt, a Tottenham shirt, and an England shirt. It was all three of them in one. It was a terrible, terrible footballing performance from Kyle Walker. But he's improved this season, and his pace saves him a lot of the time. But he seems like he's getting back now. He's a lot more physical this season. He seems a lot more confident as well. And it almost seems like with the departure of Vincent Kompany that he's kind of taken on the role of being a leader at the back. I know we've not got many leaders, and we've not got. But I almost see Kyle Walker as the. All right, Emeric's a fantastic football player, but I just see Kyle Walker as that physical player that's got the pace and that maybe is saved by that pace sometimes, but that has maybe taken the reins on and said, you know what, I'll try my best to organise this defence. But he is to blame for giving away that first penalty yesterday. But there isn't only him to blame for that. And I think it's what you were getting at, Ian, the fact that in midfield at times we give players far too much space, far too much time. Rodri, for me, allows people far too much time on the ball. He doesn't do what Fernandinho does and breaks up the play. He doesn't do what De Jong used to do and smash someone. He isn't physical enough, added to what Louisa said. There isn't somebody in there, in Rodri that I believe will ever smash someone. I'm not trying to promote injuring people and leaving people on the deck with 6 month to 12-month injuries here and layoffs. But go in a bit and get stuck in.
Let your man know you're there.
He did it against Wolves the other day. He won last week. Sorry, he won a challenge, and it was with Fernandinho next to him. And I thought, go on, Rodri. Is this? Are you there now, or what? Is this what we're going to see? And then when Fernandinho went off yesterday, like what Paul said, Rodri kind of went back to default Rodri from last season. And it was like, if you, for me, have got to have Fernandinho on the pitch holding your hand, and you're supposed to be his replacement in a year's time, then for me, that's not good enough. I watched the full highlights back. I did my own analysis of the highlights. I actually recorded myself doing it just in case, obviously, I could play it to you tonight. But just because I watched the whole game back on highlight 3 minutes, and I actually analysed the stuff before the penalties. And some of it, for me, based on what I've seen for the last 2 years, is actually disgusting. The intensity, the work rate, the tracking back is absolutely terrible. I'll give you some players. Foden's to blame in one of them. Foden and Rodri as a partnership for the Mendy penalty that Mendy gave away. Them two are to blame. They get bypassed by Maddison. For the second Vardy goal, Castagna, he runs 20 yards past 3 City men. Kevin De Bruyne stops dead and stands there and watches Castagna run past him, stays there and watches the whole move unfold in front of his eyes. Ball comes across. Eric Garcia's a yard off the pace. Vardy, nice little flick into the back of the net. Garcia, where were you? Get in front of your man. I was taught that at 7 years old. If you're a defender, get in front of your man. If the cross doesn't get stopped, get in front of the man and stop the player that's receiving it, get into it. Shambolic yesterday in certain areas of the pitch, and it was schoolboy stuff. It was simple stuff that we weren't doing right. Fernandinho made a mistake in midfield as well yesterday, where it wasn't a mistake where he gave the ball away. It was a mistake where he allowed a player to pass him. That's not Fernandinho. Fernandinho doesn't let players run past him and pass him. I don't know whether he just didn't want to get a yellow card maybe for the first time in his career at City, because you could put a bet on Ferner getting a yellow card every game and you'd be quids in every season. But he just didn't want to put the challenge in. Now, I love these players that I'm talking about, but you are right, Ian. Phil Foden gets a free pass for me. Kevin De Bruyne sometimes gets a free pass because of who he is. And for me, it's players like Mendy and Mahrez, granted they make mistakes, and Gundogan even, who I love, that get lambasted. No matter who makes the mistake in a game, they could make a little error in the match, and De Bruyne could make a huge one. And people will spend that much time. The majority of City fans, I genuinely believe this, will take more time analysing the one tiny mistake that Gundogan, Mahrez or Mendy made than they will looking at the huge one that De Bruyne made, because Kevin De Bruyne is allowed to make mistakes. But for me, if you're going to criticise one player for a mistake, you can criticise another player that's massive in the club for the same mistake, because the same mistake has still been made regardless of which player it is. We've all got favourites. We've all got favourite players. But you can't start nitpicking at certain players more than others because you don't like them. You can do. That's your perspective. That's your prerogative. But there's an agenda against certain players, and then players get lambasted for stuff that players like De Bruyne and players like the Stockport Iniesta, Phil Foden, get a free pass against. And for me, at times, I just think that we've got to look at it a bit more outside the box and look at players on an even keel sometimes and go, if he makes a mistake, he's getting what he's getting. I'm not saying lambast him. I'm just saying be a bit more rational with how you're criticising people.